Today's hearing has been a long time in the making. For some 37 years since the birth of modern Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe has dominated the political landscape of this resource-rich and promising country, first as Prime Minister, then as President, and always as strongman. It was a 37 rule which sadly betrayed the post-colonial aspirations of freedom, one of which was marked by misrule, mismanagement, and mistreatment of Mugabe's fellow citizens. For many Zimbabweans, and for many years, envisioning a Zimbabwe without Mugabe was considered a fool's errand. Elections, some more flawed than others, had come and gone, opportunities for reform fallen by the wayside, and through it all, the domineering presence of one man haunted the dreams of his countrymen. Then, in a matter of weeks, culminating last November, the landscape changed. The once invincible ruler in October of 2017 set into motion a series of events which left him not only ousted from the Zimbabwean National Union Patriotic Front, or ZANU-PF, but pushed off his presidential perch. The drama began in earnest when Mugabe sought to prop up his wife Grace's standing as his designated successor by ousting one of his two vice presidents, Emmerson Mnangagwa, presumably to elevate his wife to the position, while simultaneously moving against Mnangagwa's allies in the government and in ZANU-PF, promoting a younger generation allied with Grace. Mnangagwa was part of an older faction of ZANU-PF, the generation that fought for liberation with roots and strong connections in the military. As Rhodesian Bush War veterans and political survivors, Mnangagwa and his comrades could draw upon a reservoir of experience and cunning. They were not to be so easily pushed aside. So while Mugabe sought to tighten the reins of control in favor of his wife and her allies, the other vice president and head of the Zimbabwe Defense Force, Constantino Chiwenga, made a bold statement on November 13, saying, and I quote, "Matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in." This was declared treasonous, but before Chiwenga himself could be arrested, the Zimbabwe Defense Forces did, in fact, step in and confine the long-serving president to his quarters while taking control of key points around the country. What followed were spontaneous popular demonstrations against Robert Mugabe, indicating that the spell had been broken. ZANU-PF convened a meeting which declared Mnangagwa to be interim leader of the party, and in the face of impeachment proceedings against Mugabe, the 93-year-old president reluctantly stepped down, allowing Mnangagwa to assume the vacancy. This series of actions preserved the veneer of constitutional process, such that neither our country nor the African Union could label the events that took place a coup. Indeed, if it were a coup, it was popularly supported one, and one which subsequently received high court ratification. So where does that leave us? Who is Emmerson Mnangagwa, the man who was sworn in as Zimbabwe's president on November 21st? Critics have called him the crocodile and recall his role as Mugabe's right-hand man and confidant, including during the brutal period in the early 1980s, when in the newly independent nation, Mugabe waged an internal campaign of repression against fellow revolutionary leader Joshua Nkomo, killing thousands of ethnic minority individuals who were followers of Nkomo. During this time, Mugabe was assisted by military advisors from East Germany and North Korea, and his Minister of State Security, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Others more charitably admit that Mnangagwa was indeed once the crocodile, but maintain that he has changed, undergoing a religious conversion to evangelical Christianity. Indeed, his rhetoric since acceding to power has been reassuring, stating that he will restore democracy, rule of law, economic prosperity, and trade while addressing endemic corruption. On the issue of land tenure, he said he would end the seizures of property that Mugabe had used to punish enemies and to reward cronies. So they stand at a crossroads, perhaps facing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where Zimbabwe can chart a new course. Yet we cannot forget and cannot be Pollyannish about it, nor disregard the wise words of Pete Townsend, who once said, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, we won't get fooled again." Hopefully none of that will be true. On the issue of land seizures, for example, one notes that the newly retired general, as of December 28, 2017, the new Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, who issued the treasonous challenge that led to Mugabe's ouster, is alleged to be a beneficiary of Mugabe's past largesse with other people's land. This is perhaps something which one of our witnesses today could, or all of them, might want to speak to and clarify. Indeed, as we attempt to read the tea leaves and discern what is in the future, we will be assisted by a stellar panel. While the State Department is unable to send a witness due to the immediacy of issues concerning the budget and Secretary of State Tillerson's impending trip to Africa, we have with us a former ambassador to the United States, a very distinguished one at that, to Zimbabwe, as well as one of the key implementers of our democracy promotion policy in Zimbabwe. We also have two Zimbabweans with us who are extremely well-versed, and involved in the contemporary events in the country. Today's hearing will look at the prospects for true democratic and governance reform, as well as the potential restoration of the rule of law. We truly hope that the arrival of a new government signals an opportunity for establishing a mutually beneficial relationship between the United States and Zimbabwe, and that as the near future unfolds, events will allow us to reevaluate some of the sanctions that were imposed during the Mugabe years. I'd like to yield to my good friend and ranking member, Ms. Bass, for any opening comments. Okay. I'll go to the chairman of the full committee.
I thank you. Karen, thanks for, Congresswoman, thanks for allowing me to make an opening statement as well. And let me thank the both of you for your engagement on the continent, an engagement that has been consistent, and now there are some new opportunities. I recall it's about 20 years ago that I was in Harare and in Baholeo, and the emotional feeling of listening to Morgan Tsvangirai supporters, and later him, speak about that issue of human rights, and going back later and not being able to get into the country, but having the opportunity to meet with some of those who had been tortured or had gone through a lot, and not just members of that movement for democratic change, also some of the ZANU-PF members that I talked to who tried to speak out. And this is the problem of a society in which you have a totalitarian aspect that takes hold. And slowly economic freedom erodes, opportunity erodes, and you have a situation where people have absolutely no ability any longer to choose their leaders or to choose the future for their country. Now that is in play again. Now there is that opportunity. And I know the international community and NGOs and those concerned with leading on human rights have great hope at this point in time. We watched here on this committee as the regime stripped away the opportunity that existed for people. But Zimbabwe, as you all know, was once the breadbasket for the region. And we had a Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act that we passed here in 2001, in which we tried to shape events there.